Hi everyone, it's Dr. Alexis Conason, and I am so happy to be joining you here for another Facebook Live session. And I'm going to be answering some more of your questions about mindful eating. So, we're going to be spending about half an hour together today. And a little bit about me, for those of you who are not familiar with my work. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm in practice here in New York City. And I am also the founder of the Anti-Diet Plan, which is a course to help people change their relationship with food. It's based on mindful eating, self-acceptance, self-compassion, all the good stuff that I think we really need a lot more of in our lives. And if you want to learn more about the Anti-Diet Plan and my work, you can sign up for. I do offer a free, completely free 30-day starter course. You can find that on my website, www.drconason.com. So I'm going to be answering some more of your questions. I did a webinar with Happify, which is a program designed to help people kind of increase their happiness in their life, and I created a mindful eating track for them. And I did a webinar about mindful eating a few months ago, and we had so many wonderful questions, and I felt, that each question was really worth answering. And we only had a little bit of time. The whole webinar, I think, was only 30 minutes, so we just had time for like one or two questions to answer during the live webinar at that point. But I have this list of like 40 awesome questions that you all asked, and I've just been going through them on my lives. So I'm also happy to answer any questions that you have. So if you're watching now live, feel free to write in, say hello, let me know that you're here, and you can ask your questions and I will answer it now. But I'm going to start off answering some of the questions from the Happify webinar. And by the way, the webinar is available. You can see it on my website, www.drconason.com. By the way, I was recently told you don't have to say www. Whatever the website is anymore. So I guess that totally dates me, and I feel old because I always say www, but I guess it's not a thing anymore. So we can just say drconason.com. That's my website. I'm still from the generation that I remember the days without internet and without the World Wide Web. So technology never ceases to amaze me. I categorized the questions and that I got from the webinar, and one of the categories that I wanted to talk about today is this idea about mindful eating, and what if we want to eat mindfully, but our body craves unhealthy foods. So I had several questions about this, including one viewer from the webinar had asked, you're hungry and your body tells you, or you think it tells you to, so I'm just trying to find it here. You're hungry, or your body tells you, you're hungry and your body tells you, or you think it tells you, to go for the bag of Doritos or a handful of M&Ms. What do we do? So there were a few questions kind of along these lines, like, what if our bodies are craving unhealthy food items like fast food or fried food? So I think that we have a lot of worry that when we start eating mindfully, and for those of you not familiar with my program, mindful eating is really about, well, say the Anti-Diet Plan, my version of mindful eating, because not everybody who does mindful eating follows the same path, but my version of mindful eating is really about dropping the restrictions around food. So we live in such a diet-obsessed culture. We're always, about like, what food should I eat? What foods shouldn't I eat? What are the good foods, the bad foods? And if you listen to 10 different health experts, you'll get 10 different opinions on what we should be eating, what we shouldn't be eating, what's healthy, what's not healthy. And it changes day by day. It certainly changes year by year. If you look at the different, popular fad diets by the decades, it's like, we should only be eating low fat. No, we should only be eating low sugar. No, we should only be eating high fat. No, we should only be eating low carb. I mean, it can drive us all crazy. But the good news is that we have the wisdom within ourselves. Like our body comes equipped with, our internal, what I call our internal GPS system, which is our internal appetite navigation system that will guide our eating and tell us not only when to eat, how much to eat, when to stop eating, but also what to eat. And there's a lot of fear when we drop the rules around food, when we stop saying, well, the M&Ms are bad. I can't eat M&Ms. I can't eat Doritos. I can't eat, fried food or fast food, that we are going to be completely out of control. So I don't know if anybody else has had this fear, has experienced this, that when they start the process of intuitive eating or mindful eating or following my plan, the anti-diet plan, it's like this total moment of almost paralyzing fear of, oh my gosh, can I trust my body? Is my body going to lead me astray? And often when we think about our body leading us astray, we think about, what if all I want to do is eat, fried food all the time? Or what if I just want to eat Doritos for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or M&Ms for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? And it's scary. Like, it's just, I don't know what to say about it other than it's just really can be scary as hell to trust our bodies and to have faith that our bodies naturally crave a diversity of different foods. What makes us feel actually so out of control around certain foods, so we talked about this a little bit last time, I think 2 weeks ago, when we talked about sugar addiction, that actually what makes us feel so out of control around foods, it's not necessarily that we're addicted to sugar, but that the idea that we can't eat these certain foods, the restriction, is what drives us feeling totally kind of out of control around the foods. And then we label it with an addiction, or we can't be trusted around certain foods, or we just need to avoid or keep away from these types of foods. And it contributes to the cycle, because the more that we tell ourselves that we can't eat those foods, again, the more out of control we feel around those foods. They take on a lot of emotional value, right? Then it's not just about, I ate M&Ms because I wanted some chocolate or I was craving, some candy that day. We become, we beat ourselves up for it. It becomes, oh my gosh, I can't believe I ate that. I told myself I wasn't going to have any sugar. I'm supposed to be following the sugar detox, and now I've blown it. And, for any dieters out there, you probably know where that leads to, right? Well, now I've blown it. I've gone off track. I might as well, have the whole bag of M&Ms. So it's ironic, but the things that we do to try to control our eating because we feel out of control around our eating are actually the things that are making us feel most out of control. Does that make sense? Are people following me? I know it's counterintuitive. When we can let go of the restrictions around food, when we can actually say, I can eat whatever I want to eat, including M&Ms, fast food, fried food, Doritos, all the foods that people wrote into the questions and saying, oh my gosh, what if my body craves these foods? If we allow ourselves to have these foods and try to kind of neutralize them, make them just another food option. What people tend to find is that over time, the foods have less power over us. So over time, it becomes, the bag of M&Ms become less compelling because we really know that we can have it whenever we want it. But in order for that to happen, we have to truly allow ourselves to have these foods whenever we want them. So, if you're hungry and your body is telling you to go for the bag of Doritos or a handful of M&Ms, I 110% think that you should be having the Doritos or the bag full of M&Ms. And I don't think we should be afraid of that. Sometimes when people initially lessen the restrictions around food, we tend to have an adjustment period, right? We spend so many years saying, I can't have these foods, I can't have these foods, we're restricted. And then all of a sudden we start saying, oh, okay, I'm going to follow this plan. I'm going to allow myself to have for example, chocolate whenever I want it. And we start, there can be kind of this transitory period where our body's like, oh my gosh, chocolate. We haven't been able to eat chocolate for years, perhaps so much of our lives. And we will say, yes, chocolate, it's there, it's in the house. I want it, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, 24/7. But if we stick with it, so I'll say that's where people tend to get discouraged and think, a total nut job, and what is this lady telling me to do? I feel completely out of control with my eating. But if you stick with it, okay, I can't emphasize this enough, stick with it through that process, continue to eat these foods and continue to follow the path of non-restrictive eating, it eventually does sink in that, like, oh, those M&Ms, they're always going to be there. I can always have them. And they feel less compelling. We feel less compelled to have to eat them in that moment. So the anti-diet plan, mindful eating, it is a leap of faith. It is like blind trust in yourself that your body is going to regulate, even if we are scared as hell that it's not going to. I get how scary and hard it is to do that. And this process, I wish it was easy. I wish that there was a way to say, this is how it's going to work. This is, I could tell you exactly what the path is going to be like, how long it's going to take, all that stuff, but I can't, because it's really every body is so different, and we've been struggling with these issues, many of us, for most of our lives. So I do think the turning point, though, is recognizing that what we've been doing is not working for us. So restricting these foods, saying that, if we're craving unhealthy foods, again, I say unhealthy foods in quotes because I really don't believe that there are certain foods that are healthy or unhealthy. I think we tend to really kind of artificially dichotomize foods. And again, you ask like 10 different nutritionists or health experts, like what are the healthy foods, what are the unhealthy foods, you'll get 10 different answers. It's really about, starting to tune into your body and recognizing what foods work well with your body and what foods don't work well with your body. That's how I see food, as kind of, good or bad, if we do have to categorize it like that at all in any way. But the more that we deny our bodies what we're craving, the more out of control that we feel. And there's actually a lot of research about this. There's a lot of research that shows that when we're dieting and restricting ourselves, not listening to our cravings, not having the chocolate, not having the Doritos when we want them, that those cravings become more and more intense. And eventually they win out, because we're talking about our body's physiology. Like, this is created over evolution to keep us alive. So if we're trying to fight against our body's really strong internal, physiological mechanisms designed for survival, we're just going to be on the losing end of that battle. Like, I can tell you that's for sure. One of the things that, that the dieting industry and the weight loss industry does is they kind of prey on our fear that our bodies are kind of bad and out of control, and they market to that, right? So they say, you're feeling out of control with sugar, you're feeling out of control with eating fried foods. Here's our 12-day plan to help you, detox from sugar, or just follow this, low carbohydrate diet, or whatever it is. I can tell you 1,000,001 plans out there that do promise to tell you exactly what to do for how long and what the results are going to be. And they may work for a few weeks, a few days, maybe a month or two, maybe a year if you're lucky. But you look at the long-term data, 5 years and out, the most likely outcome is weight gain. So I think that if you have found your way here to me and my program and the anti-diet plan and mindful eating and trying to embrace this other path, then congratulations, because it's not an easy journey. but you're on the journey. And I think that's the most important part, just kind of recognizing that dieting doesn't work, that restricting these foods is not the path to salvation as we're promised that it is. You're doing the work. So congratulations again. And I'm going to take another question here. This is a related question. And this person asks, how important is it to have an accountability partner in this process? They say, my family isn't interested in healthy eating. My spouse constantly is buying junky food because it's less expensive. So yeah, I mean, I want to address, first of all, that, you know, there are confines on our eating. We restrict our, you know, we have restricted access to food in a few different ways. One is we restrict our access to food ourselves, that we actually, you know, don't allow ourselves, like I've been talking about, we don't allow ourselves to eat the foods that our bodies crave. So that's one way we restrict access to food. Another way that we restrict access to food is financial limitations, right? So some people have real concrete financial limitations that are going to affect the kinds of foods that they can afford and what they can buy. A really interesting study came out by Carolyn Becker and her group, and I wrote about it on my Psychology Today blog, Eating Mindfully. And the article talked about that there's actually really high rates of eating disorders in very low income communities. So they looked at, this was a study that looked at people who were getting food from a food pantry. So, you know, people who needed to rely on a food pantry to get their food. And they looked at, out of those people, people who reported having children in the home who are hungry, which is actually, you know, you can tell that those are the most severe cases because typically families will put their resources towards feeding their children first. So if the children are hungry, you know the adults are hungry in those homes. And they found really high rates of eating disorders, binge eating, some restrictive eating, different types of eating disorders in that population. And I heard her speak at a conference, and I just loved, you know, a quote that she said, which is something along the lines, I hope I don't butcher it, but this is where we see some of the bias in research, is that she said, you know, we're so convinced that we think we know who gets eating disorders that we only study the groups that we think we get eating disorders. So if you look at the eating disorder research, it's like 90% of the studies are done in young white college women. So we're not looking at how eating disorders and disordered eating, you know, affects low-income communities, low-income individuals, people of color, different people with in marginalized bodies. Anyways, I don't want to deter too much from our topic of mindful eating here, but I do want to highlight that restriction, whether it comes from financial limitations or from our own self-imposed limitations, is shown to really affect our eating and increase our kind of, you know, binge eating, disordered eating, and make us feel out of control with food, regardless of why that restriction is happening. So I thought that was just a super interesting study. But back to the idea of accountability partner, and, you know, what do we do if, like, our family, you know, we want to eat one way and our family is eating another way? And you know, my favorite thing about mindful eating and the anti-diet plan is that it's not about accountability at all. Because what does accountability say to me? Accountability says we are white knuckling it. We are holding on for dear life. We're doing that sugar detox, and we, you know, can't be near sugar. We can't be around any kinds of, you know, unhealthy or junk food because we're going to be tempted to eat those foods. The anti-diet plan is not about not eating those foods. It's actually just the opposite. It's like bring those foods into your house. Fill your cabinets with the foods that you fear you're going to be out of control with, and allow yourself to have it, and start seeing, rather than what you can have and what you can't have and what you need to resist and restrain yourself from, what do you actually want? So that's like, that can be like kind of a revolutionary question. Like, what do you actually want to eat? And I think that when we're tuning into our body and just listening to like what we want and eating the foods that our body craves, and if our spouse is filling, you know, our cabinets with junk food and that's food that's appealing to us and we eat it when we want it, we really don't need an accountability partner. Like, we're our own accountability partner, you know, because we're not struggling against ourselves. When we need an accountability partner, it means we're doing something, we're forcing ourselves to do something that we don't want to do, right? So you might have an accountability partner to go to the gym and say, you know, I'm going to show up with my friend at the gym 3 days a week. Problem with that is, one, your friend doesn't show up. You often don't go either. And two, it's like saying to me that you're going because you're forcing yourself to go when really maybe you don't want to go. And if you don't want to go, why are you going in the first place? Like, why are we doing things that we don't want to do, that don't feel right to our body, that aren't nourishing, that aren't joyful? It keeps us stuck in that bind of working against ourselves. And I really don't think that we can long-term sustain a conflict with ourselves. It's just, like I said, it's kind of a losing battle. So I think that the anti-diet plan, I know the anti-diet plan is about stepping out of that conflict, stepping away from the war that we've waged against our own bodies and against our own selves, and really tuning into like, what's enjoyable, what do we like, what do we want, what makes our body feel good. And I really don't think we need accountability in that. And I don't think we need to get the whole family on board. Although, like, I will say that often when we change our eating and start like lessening the restrictions around food, and this is actually something I want to do a whole other series on, about mindful eating and motherhood and mindful eating and parenthood. If anyone's interested in that, please let me know, because I think that's something that I'm really interested in, and I want to kind of plan a whole program around that. So if you're interested, definitely let me know that you want to hear about that. When we start making changes in our eating, then the family follows suit. And that doesn't mean going on a diet. Again, like, our children see us, you know, being accepting of ourselves, starting to tune into, oh, I don't really want that extra slice of cake tonight because, you know what, I feel satisfied from the first slice. Right? That's a very different model that your children are seeing than, oh, you know, mommy shouldn't have the cake because the cake is bad. You know, mommy doesn't want to gain weight, or mommy can't eat those foods, or, oh, you know, you enjoy the dessert tonight, I'm just going to watch you enjoy it because I can't have it. Right? What message does that send to our children? So I could talk for like a whole other, you know, hour probably at least, or a whole day. I could do a whole workshop on this. But we are, you know, as parents, for those of you listening who are parents, we are, you know, the number one models that our kids look to. And they are not looking to us to see that we're following, you know, some diet plan or what our body looks like. Like, no kid ever said, I really love my mommy, she lost 5 pounds. Like, that's not what our kids love about us. And I think that when we can model, you know, kind of an all foods fit, non-restrictive way of eating, that can be really meaningful for our families. So while we don't need accountability partners, we don't need our spouse to get on board with mindful eating, or, you know, we don't need someone else kind of monitoring us. I do think that there's something to be said about embracing this for ourselves, embracing a more loving, caring, nurturing stance towards ourselves, and allowing, you know, our family to see that. And likely they will follow suit, because modeling is one of the best ways that we can help people get changes, right? Make changes in their lives. People don't respond to changes, by the way, if you tell them what to do. It doesn't work. I don't know if anybody's ever tried to like tell someone to change something, but you're going to hit up on a lot of resistance. That is not going to be an effective strategy for change. Change comes from acceptance. self-acceptance. And it comes from a place of compassion and caring for ourselves and nurturing ourselves. And that's really kind of the secret to long-lasting, meaningful changes, both around our eating and in any other area of our life. So I'm just going to really quickly go through, most of the questions were kind of on about what to do if our body craves unhealthy foods. We're on a lot of the same things we've already touched on. What are some good tips to use when making healthy eating choices but not feeling deprived? Really simply eat what you want. Okay, so listen to your body. If you're craving something, eat it. Sorry, I mean, I'm laughing because it sounds so simple, and I always say the program is simple, but it's not necessarily easy because we have so much judgment, and diet culture is so deeply ingrained in our brains. Oprah said in a magazine article once that Weight Watchers is mindful eating because she, instinctively counts points. Like she doesn't even have to think about it or pull out her guide or whatever. And Weight Watchers couldn't be more the opposite of mindful eating. I'm just going to call them out on that. And I love Oprah in many, many ways. Her endorsement of Weight Watchers, not part of the reason that I love her, but she, the idea that like diet culture is so deeply ingrained into your brain that you're automatically counting points even when you're not thinking about it, that's not mindful eating. That means that you have really entrenched judgment and beliefs about food that are on an external level guiding your eating and trying to override what your body is actually trying to tell you. So like the fact that diet culture is entrenched in our minds is actually really problematic. It's not a sign that you're eating mindfully just because you can count points or count calories without thinking about it. It's a sign that we have been indoctrinated into a way of thinking that values external content, external guidance about what our body needs above what our body actually needs. So all of that, kind of calorie counting and point counting, far from being mindful eating, I actually, view that as like interference, as noise that is talking over our body's own internal appetite navigation system, which is what mindful eating is really trying to tune into. So I just think it's kind of funny when diet companies, the antithesis of mindful eating, have kind of caught on to mindful eating being very in vogue right now and try to use the lingo even though it just couldn't be any more different. And again, like I love Oprah. No one called me out for hating Oprah. I was a loyal, I am and was a loyal fan for many years, but I don't agree with what she's doing with Weight Watchers over there. I think that she's promoting a plan that she knows in her heart of hearts does not work and actually, can do a lot of harm for people. I work with people who so many years after doing Weight Watchers cannot get those damn point systems out of their head. It's like impossible to eat a banana or a meal or whatever without saying, oh, that's 1 point or 3 points or whatever. So anyways, I think we basically covered most of the questions about, what to do if your body's craving certain kinds of unhealthy foods. I mean, my takeaway point is that I don't believe that any food should be off limits or unhealthy to begin with. And listen to our body, not some kind of arbitrary diet rules that change week by week. So anyways, Thank you all for joining me here on our Facebook Live. I'm here every Wednesday at noon answering different topics, and I would love to hear about what you want to talk about. So if you have ideas of things that you want me to talk about, please write them into the comments section, and we could do a session on whatever it is that you want to hear about. If you're interested, again, in learning more about the Anti-Diet Plan and my program, you can head over to my website, drconison.com. Again, I have just learned you don't have to say the www, so drconison.com. And I offer a free 30-day The Anti-Diet Plan Starter course that'll give you some tips and some information to get going on this journey. I won't promise that it's an easy journey, but I think it's a deeply fulfilling one that leads to far more connection, happiness, joy, and peace in our lives than any diet plan can possibly bring you. So again, thank you for taking the time to join me today, and I will look forward to seeing you all next week.